And good evening, and time for another edition of the Kaufman Corner podcast. With you, as always, the good doctor, Dr. Rany Jazayerli. I am Soren Petro. Thanks for joining us here. Much to get to as the Royals just keep on winning. Another sweep for the boys in blue. They take care of the A's. Where are we on the playoff optimism meter? Are there any teams that should scare you that can knock the Royals out of a wild card spot? Is it time to give up on this outfield as a whole? What's the timeline for Kris Bubic? 14 team was celebrated with their American League championship. How do they compare this 24 team to the 2014 team? And the starting rotation, how does it compare? Starting rotations from the past, maybe some memories of the 2014 team. We talk about it right now here on the Kaufman Corner podcast.
You're listening to Kaufman Corner, the most in-depth analysis of the Kansas City Royals, breaking down the Royals like no one else can. Kaufman Corner is hosted by Rany Jazayerli and Soren Petro. Rany is a co-founder of Baseball Prospectus, author of Rany on the Royals, and former columnist for Grantland, The Ringer, and The Athletic. Soren is the award-winning afternoon drive host of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. Kaufman Corner is proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, Kansas City's nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear since 1994. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, one contractor, all things parking lot. Now, here's your hosts, Rany Jazayerli and Soren Petro.
Thank you very much, Curtis. We do appreciate it here on what is, where we are getting ready to be, if not already, depending upon where in the KC Metro you might be, a stormy evening. But the storm was the Royals today, Rany. Sweeping the Oakland A's. You got to feel good about where this ball club is right now. I'm guessing you're a 9 or 10. On the playoff.
I as tempted as I may be to be breaking the scale on May the 19th, I will do my best to keep my optimism in check. But I definitely have optimism. I mean, how else are you supposed to feel after the Royals not just swept the A's, but really at no point in the series did they appear to be in danger of losing any of those games? I mean, the final score of the three games were 6-2, 5-3, and 8-4. But in the first and last game, the Royals official victory cigar, Matt Sauer, gave up a home run with 2 outs in the 9th inning. A 2-run shot.
Wait a minute. Don't go too fast. The Royals official victory cigar. Take a bow about that one. Let that one soak in. I love that. That is how the rule.
Remember Darko? Remember Darko Milicic with the Pistons way back when? He was the victory cigar. They put him in the game when they were up 25 with 13 seconds left. That's what Matt Sauer is at this point. But he gave up 5 runs in 2 meaningless 9th innings, wrecked their run differential, but made the games look closer than they were. The Royals took care of business. All right, they did what a good team should do to a bad team at home. Not just win, but win with fairly minimal drama.
Right.
And, at some point we just have to accept what we are seeing. When someone shows you who they are, you believe them. When a team shows you what they are, believe them. And maybe in the past, I haven't been quick enough to believe the Royals were as bad as they were. This feels like one of those times where we have to accept the Royals might just be as good as they're playing or close to it. They continue to get really good starting pitching every single game. They also continue to make their life much more difficult than it needs to be by basically punting on the entire outfield. I mean, you could argue that the Royals are 29-19. They're 10 games over 500 for the first time since they won the World Series 9 years ago. And they're doing it using 21 of their 26 roster spots. They are just punting on 5 roster spots, but the core of this roster is so good. It hasn't mattered more often than not. It eventually will catch up to them. Eventually, it'll bite them in the ass. But right now, it's working, and hopefully, it's giving them some breathing room, some time to figure out how to solve those, holes in their lineup and holes on their roster.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think we are passing a point where you have to go, okay, they're legit. Now, again, I will point out one of the reasons why I started at a 4 on our playoff optimism meter, and let's do remember to give our number.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Yes.
But one of the reasons why I started at a 4 was because of the depth, and depth needs 100 plus games to really be tested. We need to see where the injuries are. Now, they've handled a couple of them, right? They've had Salvy out for a game here or there. They started the year without Michael Massey. Kris Bubic, they started the year without him, and that hasn't really been a problem because of how good the rotation's been. And they weathered out Marsh being down for a couple of starts. So they have not been injury-free. Like, we spent the first 3, 4, 5 weeks saying, well, they haven't even made a move yet. Well, they've had to make some moves. But they haven't really been tested. And they might not. I will again say, they're a younger team, not necessarily maybe on the rotation side, but they're a younger team, and younger teams stay healthier. Mm-hmm. So that is one of the things that is working in their favor. Is they should be healthier as some of the more veteran teams get dinged up. But yeah, there's, I think, listen, even when Seth Lugo only goes 5, he strikes out 10 now, right? Like he
struck out 14 batters in his first 5 starts, and we were, it was a reason for concern. And he struck out 44 batters in his next 5 starts. Like, it's like, oh, you guys are worried about me not, you think this is smoke and mirrors? I'll show you what I can do if you really want me to miss bats. Cole Reagans on Friday, the whole game, people on my Twitter feed were concerned because his velocity was down, right? To the point where, okay, what's going on here? He's only throwing 90, 94, 95. Then in the 6th and 7th inning, he starts humping it up to 96, 97. I'm pretty sure his fastest pitch of the game was his final pitch of the game. I believe he hit 98 on his final pitch. And I mean, so to me, that's not a guy whose velocity is down. That's a guy who is conserving his stuff, right? He still has plenty left in the tank, and a guy who's not throwing 100% on every pitch. Like, there is not a better indicator for me of a pitcher who's likely to stay healthy than a guy who's able to max out his velocity at the very end of the game. I famously remember, this is way back in 2012, Justin Verlander. And it's only 12 years ago, but it feels like a completely different game. Was in the game in the 9th inning against the Royals. The inning started, he was up 3-1. It was in Kansas City, bottom of the 9th. He gave up a run with 2 outs. Then a single hit batter had the bases loaded to Alex Gordon. Justin Verlander's still in the game. On his 131st and final pitch, he struck out Alex Gordon on a 100-mile-an-hour fastball, his fastest pitch of the game. And I remember being not just amazed by it, but also like, this guy's can probably weather the workload. And, Justin Verlander's, it was 10 years later, he blew out his arm when he was 40, and he's back, and he's still like an incredible pitcher. So the fact that Cole Reagans, we're constantly worried about, but the fact that he had stuff left in the tank, it's almost like they're not, between him and Seth Lugo, they're almost like determined to prove that what they're doing is not a fluke. They're doing this every time out. Brady Sinker today, it's like, you want him to fight. He's 27 years old now, 26, 27. It's like, now is the time to show. Well, he's showing it. He's shoving it. He's pitching very well every time out. Marsh obviously has been a revelation. Walker's really been the odd man out. But if you look at FIP and other stats other than ERA, he's been fine. He's just been hit around in a couple of outings. But he debuted his new pitch, new slider the last time out. I'm very curious to see what he does his next time out. So, right, and then to throw on to that, Kris Bubic today moved up to Double-A after 3 rehab starts in rookie ball. Each one an inning, I think an inning and a third, one of them. He went out today, 36 pitches, 3 innings, 1 hit, no walks, 3 strikeouts. Are you telling me Kris Bubic might be ready by June 1st? I mean, generally teams will give a guy 4 or 5 starts in the high minors for rehab before they're back from Tommy John. But like, are you telling me they don't even have a spot for him in the rotation? Like, could they put him in the bullpen?
Isn't that the talking point, that we're not sitting here going, well, if they can just hang on to Bubic gets back, right? And waiting for Bubic to come in and be the ace of the staff. There are two guys that show the ability to miss bats the way an ace, or at least a guy who can go out and for one game pitch like an ace, right? They've got two guys like that. They've got depth in the rotation. They don't have to rush Kris Bubic back.
Right.
I mean,
But at this point, it's like they don't have to rush him, but they may not even need him in the rotation.
Yeah, but more amazing than Bubic pitching well is that they're not desperate for him.
Exactly. It's look, I was like this a little bit last week with David Lesky. This sense of like wonderment that you and I are sharing now, like we've reached that point of like, I think psychologically we're accepting you can tell that we've accepted the fact the Royals might be good because we're I don't know what the word is. It's like exasperation, but in a positive way. Like I'm not sure exactly what the word is in the English language. Befuddlement, but like in a good way. We can't believe what we're seeing in a good way. The Royals have more starting pitchers than they can use potentially. That is not something. I mean, even the 2014, 2015 team. I mentioned this last week. Jeremy Guthrie was in the rotation in 2015. Like they didn't go 5 deep. They went 4 deep, and it was a hope and a prayer every 5th game. They have as deep a rotation as I've seen from them in a very long time. Maybe, I mean, we go back to the 85 team. I have the numbers here. It's obviously 6 weeks into the season. So it's not fair to compare apples. This is not apples to apples because I'm comparing against full seasons. But right now, the rotation, if you just look at the starting pitchers for every Royals team ever, this Royals team, not counting today, and obviously the number would go down, had a 3.11 ERA from their starting pitchers in 2024. That is the lowest ERA by 11 points in Royals history. The lowest rotation ERA before this season was 3.22. That was 1972, which was such a low offense year, they invented the DH after it. So, like, relative to the league, the Royals are even better this year because 72 was a lower offense year than 2024. So, this team is up there. I mean, the 1985 team features very prominently on this list of the best rotations. And certainly in terms of depth, the worst starter on that team was probably Bud Black. So that's still probably the gold standard. But 6 weeks into the season, and guys can get hurt, etc. But this team, the rotation compares favorably with basically every Royals team I can think of.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's too early to put those numbers there because they did get off to such a great start. But, what's a better 1-2 punch than the way Lugo and Reagans are pitching right now? Where would you go? Sabragan, Cone?
Cone, Apier.
They didn't have
not those together. But Cone Apier in 93 and 94. 93 and 94. That's probably, man. Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to think with Greinke Mesh. Maybe I'm trying to think, was Mesh still? I think Mesh got hurt midway through the 09 season because that was Greinke's Cy Young year. So even that year, they didn't get a full year out of Mesh. So yeah, you probably have to go back to Cone Apier.
Tell me, we had the question about Kris Bubic. Curtis said, "What about Kris?" Hang on, where was it? He said, "What about Bubic as a closer?" No. And a lot of people are saying, what about trade Bubic for what you need? Where do you sit on that one?
Yeah, because he's coming back from injury, I think the simple act of putting him on the trade wire, even with the best of intentions, would probably cause his trade value to plummet because teams would be worried that something they don't. Teams are always worried about a knowledge gap. And that, why are the Royals trading? He must be, the rehab must be not as good as we thought it was or whatever. And that would cause his value to suffer. So I just don't think it's practical to trade a guy coming off Tommy John surgery until he has proven he's completely healthy. So even though you have an excess, you're more likely to trade somebody else. I think of using him as a multi-inning weapon in the bullpen. And we talked about this with Daniel Lynch when Lynch, threw 2 innings out of the bullpen and was good. The Royals sent him back down, but Bubic is more advanced than Lynch was before he got hurt. He was definitely better. He's pitched great today in a 2 or 3 inning role. They already moved. They moved on Hel Serpa very quietly. Again, Couture always pushing the right buttons. Yesterday they went to Schreiber in the 6th and 7th. I thought they were going to go to MacArthur for 2 innings. No, they brought in Serpa's potentially moved ahead of Shriver, at least in certain situations, or maybe it was just a matter of the left-right balance. But they were willing to go to Serpa with a 2-run lead in the 8th inning. So you use Serpa as the 8th inning guy, but then you free up Bubic to use him. You could use him to be a long man. You could use him to to go 3 innings if the starter gets knocked out early or whatever. Like they have options here. I mean, look, there's still 2 or 3 guys in that bullpen that nobody trusts. I mean, God bless Contreras, he's getting Will Smith, value out of Will Smith, but Matt Sauer does not deserve to be on the team. And if he wasn't a Rule 5 pick, he wouldn't be. So if you bring in Kris Bubic in that role, you're just adding even more pitching value to this team.
And what about Kris Bubic as an opener?
Yeah.
For the rest of this year. Because he's coming back. You can manage his innings. You can manage his workload. Start with the lefty, turn right around and go to a righty. I think that's...
Same with Marsh. I mean, I was going to say, you don't like, the starters are doing so well, you don't want to mess with them. But that Bubic for 2 innings and then Alex Marsh for 6 or 5 or 6.
Or even just as your long guy. I mean, I do think the problem with just saying we're going to put him in the pen is, I think when you're bringing a guy back from Tommy John, you really want to schedule when he's going to go. Right. And if you're really, if you're an opener, you can kind of schedule it.
Right. That is definitely a huge advantage there.
But when you're in the pen, it's like, well, get up. Well, we need you on short rest. That gets a little bit tricky. So it is a little bit harder with Kris Bubic. We may be like sitting here up, to be honest with you, at the trade deadline. And maybe that is the move. Maybe they move one of the pitchers and he comes in and replaces whatever pitcher they move in an old-fashioned, baseball trade. Our big leaguer for your big leaguer, our depth for your depth. But it is difficult to put him in there in that spot. What do you think about the idea of Brady Singer to the bullpen, which is where Keith Law, when he was scouted out of Florida, said he doesn't have a weapon against lefties. Now, he's overcome a lot of that. It's pretty tough to say the way Brady Singer's been pitching, like, off to the bullpen, son.
Yeah. No,
he does have the arsenal.
Yeah, I mean, he has the arsenal to be, I think, a phenomenal closer. But moving an above-average starting pitcher to the bullpen almost never makes sense, because the most valuable relievers in baseball will give you about as much value as a good number 3 starter. And there's more variability in a closer than there is in a number 3 starter. So, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And it's so it's such a strange situation we're in here, where we're talking about not moving guys, not because they're, you're hoping that they figure things out, but simply because they're providing so much value in their current role. Yeah, maybe people thought that he wasn't capable of it, and he's certainly been up and down. And I'm not saying he's solved everything. His FIP is not quite as high, not quite as low as his ERA, but there's nothing in his numbers that tell me that this is a stone cold fluke. And you're not asking him to be ace. He's the number 3 guy. He's right smack in the middle of the rotation, and he's thriving in that role. I think we have to assume this will solve itself in a way, because at some point somebody's going to get hurt. Somebody's going to get hit by another line drive or need a couple weeks off. Seth Lugo is, his career high in innings is 145. It's quite possible the Royals have a plan to deliberately give guys a 15-day stint on the IL just to rest their arms, and that they could fit in Kris Bubic that way. I don't like the 6-man rotation. I think you don't get enough innings out of guys, frankly. And then when you want to ramp them up for the playoffs, they're used to throwing every 6 days. I would rather keep guys on an every 5-game rotation, but simply give guys a 2-week breather on the IL if you think they need it. And I'm skeptical if they do. I think Cole Reagan and Lugo, if they can give you 200 innings or 195 innings, I don't see a danger there. But if Kris Bubic, if you feel like he's 100%, he's back to where he was last year, and you don't want to limit his value by having him throw 2 innings at a time, there are worse ideas in the world than giving Lugo and Reagan 2 weeks each on the injured list in July, with an eye towards they're not going to throw 195 innings because you're planning for them to throw another 25 innings in October. Like, you have to, if you're actually planning for the postseason, and at that point you kind of have to, then maybe that's what you do. So that could be a solution.
You heard Curtis say it at the beginning. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, proud to bring you the Kaufman Corner podcast. They've been making parking lot problems disappear in KC since 1994. Don't risk accidents. Don't risk liability in your parking lot. You don't have to. Get your parking lot restriped today, a brightly striped lot. Cuts down on accident, keeps your parking lot safe as possible. Can asphalt and concrete. One contractor, all things parking lot. Rany, let's talk a little bit about who should scare the Royals. Do you have some teams that, like, right now are in the rearview mirror that, we need to recognize they're going to make a run? I'll give you 4.
Well,
They're
let's
pretty
hear
obvious.
your 4. I mean, the 4. I mean, I'm not worried about. Are we talking about National League teams too? Because those don't teams. Okay, so we're talking about American League. Yeah, then it's. I mean, the Yankees just. The Yankees have the.
But they're already in front. The
Right.
Yankees, Orioles, Guardians.
Oh, so
and
you're talking about
Mariners
teams
have a division.
that scared to catch them from behind potentially.
Like, I'm not really worried about the Twins or Tigers. They may beat them, but it'll be because the Royals' offensive problems happen or injuries happen. The teams that I think are just looming are the ones that, you would have expected beforehand. The Rays, the Jays, although I think the Jays are flawed, but they've got a lot of talent. And then the Rangers and Astros.
Yeah. I would put I feel like the Astros are like the Blue Jays in that, yeah, they have a lot of talent, but they're also flawed. And I mean, I've been, kind of expecting the downfall of the Astros, that it's a team that's getting old, that's got a lot of holes, and they got they got killed in the with the draft penalty as a result of garbage can gate. They lost several first and second round picks, and their farm system is very weak. So the Astros, I mean, they're getting better. They're not as bad as they were earlier in the year, but I'm not as concerned about them. I'm not as concerned about the Blue Jays. The Rays, of course, the Rays will always be there. The Rangers, yes. And I mean, you say you're not worried about the Twins and Tigers. I am worried that the Twins, like, even if the Royals play well, the Twins could pass them, because on paper, they were the best team in the division before the season started. What I will say, though, is that, like, if you're looking at it from the perspective of trying to win the division, like, people are like, oh, the Guardians are unstoppable. And maybe they are. Or maybe they're just so well run, they just keep coming up with talent. But if you're looking at it from the standpoint of making the playoffs, to me, make the playoffs. Everything else is gravy. Make the playoffs. Then I'm actually okay. Like, for instance, the Guardians, what did they sweep the Twins? I mean, they just beat the Twins again today. I'm thrilled by that. I'd rather be chasing the Guardians, but still have a wild card spot, than to be caught from behind by the Twins. Because right now the Royals are the number 5 seed right now. And yeah, I'd rather be the number 2 seed, because especially if nobody emerges from the AL West, the winner of the AL Central will actually get a first round bye. Like right now, if the Guardians are getting a first round bye as the number 2 seed, but if you end up the number 3 seed, you don't get all you get is home field. And frankly, if you're the number 4 seed, you'll get home field in the first round as well. So I am perfectly fine with the Royals getting a wild card spot. So, seeing the Guardians sweep the Twins this weekend makes me feel good. And they're still the team I'm probably most worried about.
Is the Twins?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just because, again, he's not even from a divisional standpoint. I just worried about, trying to get a wild card. The Royals cannot be passed by more than one team based on the standings now. And the Twins would be that team, but the Rays are right there. If the Twins and the Rays get hot, then the Royals are going to have some issues.
They're 4 up right now on the third, and
right, and they were, I think, 1 up on the Twins 3 days, on Friday morning. So it was a good weekend from that standpoint.
It's why we come back around to the A's. When you play the A's, you need to take 3.
Yep.
And they did. When you play the Angels for 4, you need to take 3 out of 4. They did. They're doing what good teams are supposed to do. Listen, we went all the way through the playoff confidence meter. Never gave a number.
Oh,
where
yes.
are you at?
I'm at. So I'm going to go to 6.5. I'm not getting crazy here, but after a week like this, obviously when you get late into the season, when you get into September, 1 week slices off such a huge chunk of games left. Like, you start running out of time. So if the Royals are in this position, that number is going to go up quickly late in the year, because there's just only so much time for the teams behind them to catch them. But the difference between 120 games left, 115 games left is not, material. So the fact that they have a slightly larger lead is not a big deal. It's just the way they're playing. It's that, as long as this rotation stays healthy, and I have to think they're going to fix the outfield. They have to do something. I can't believe they haven't done it yet. I thought for sure after they lost 2 or 3 in Seattle, and the Melendez and Velasquez and Renfroe were hitting like all 3 of them were simultaneously in just incredible slumps for like a month, that they would make a change when they came home. The Royals not only didn't make a change, you do realize on the hitting side, the Royals have made exactly one transaction all season long. When Michael Massey came off the injured list and they sent Nick Lofton back down, that is the only change they have made on the offensive side of the roster all season long. That's with, Hunter Renfroe being maybe the worst hitting regular in, baseball, with, Garrett Hampson, making bad defensive decisions and bad base running decisions, and also, has an OPS under 600. Like, it's astounding to me they haven't made a change. At some point, though, they're either going to have to bring up an outfielder or trade for an outfielder. And the fact that they continue to win without doing that makes me feel optimistic that when they do, they'll be that much better. So I'm pumping my score up 0.5 point to 6.5.
Yeah, I'm at 5.5. Or excuse me, what I say? You started at 5, right?
I started at 6. Went down to 5.5 1 week, came back to 6. Now 6.5.
I
You started at 4.5,
so I'm at a 5.
Okay, you're at 5 now.
I'll put it at 50-51. We've had, I do agree, although I don't think it's, I think Matt uses the term brutal June schedule. It's tougher. I mean, if you want just the month of June, they've got some decent games coming up. Detroit, Tampa, Minnesota here still to finish May. San Diego, at Cleveland, Seattle, Yankees, at Dodgers, then at A's, at Texas, who's, we think is going to be better, but hasn't really found themselves.
Right. Then home for Miami, and then the Guardians.
So
there is a brutal 2-week schedule, 2 weeks stint in there, but you're going to have to play them at some point. And the Yankees, I'm still not convinced the Yankees are this good. And that series at least is at home, which is always good because, that team is designed to take advantage of its short porch. We don't go to New York until September. So yeah, it's going to be a tough stretch, but the last time they had a tough stretch, they came out of it 10-9. Like, they don't even have to go 10-9. If they go just around 500, like, being 10 games up now is, they actually have a little bit of a buffer here. Like, they can just come out of June still 10 games up. If they don't advance but don't fall back for the next 6 weeks, they will still absolutely be in the thick of the playoff race.
Yeah. No, and listen, that's why you win these games. That's why you take care of the bad teams. And if you can bludgeon the bad teams, then you can handle 1-2 a couple of times if you've got a 3-0 on the other side, right? That still makes you 5-4, which is what they've been doing all along. Right. So all they need to do is follow the blueprint that they've had. I've had a couple of comments about the outfield. Let's talk about that. That's on our agenda. Are you ready to punt on the outfield? You hit it just a little bit earlier, but where do they go? Another week in the same question.
I mean, it's like we feel like the Royals, the brain trust. It's a new day. It's a new front office. There so many of the inexplicable decisions of years past. Those days are over. We understand what the Royals are doing. But then every now and then a little darkness trickles through and you realize, these are still the same people who are making these decisions that we couldn't understand for so long, because the outfield, let's keep Kyle Isbell out of it. He's, he plays the most important defensive position. He plays it very well. There's a little bit of life in his bat. And he's batting ninth. Fine. But left field, right field, DH, these are positions you should be able to get offense from. And they're getting nothing. If you took the outfield as a whole, the Royals have the lowest OPS in the league from their outfield. They have, incredibly, the highest OPS of any American League team from their combined infielders, which is amazing because Baltimore's second, and Baltimore craps out elite shortstops as well as any organization I've ever seen. Jordan Westberg and Gunnar Henderson. They're actually, the reason they're only second is because Jackson Holliday got called up and was terrible for 2 weeks before they sent him down. He's still 20 years old. And I think they're just shortstop factory right now. The Royals have a better combined OPS from their infielders than the Orioles do. Michael Massey is hitting, right? And Michael Garcia is starting to, get hot again. And his OPS is almost back to 100. Bobby Witt's maybe the best player in the league. Vinny Pasquantino is a really good player. Their OPS from their catchers is second, which makes sense because Salvy's only catching 60% of the time. So obviously he's probably the best hitting catcher in the league. But as a combined effort second. But that's my point. Like that's why this team is so good despite this massive hole. But they've got to fix it.
But let's back up, because you again went to the front office and called them the same people. They're not. Coaching staff is not the same.
Coaching staff totally different.
But they speak to the coaching staff about what do you need, right? Like the opening press conference of the offseason was, we've talked. I've got to get Q some weapons in the bullpen, and he went out and did it. We need 2 starters. They went out and did it. All right. They mentioned they needed a bat. Here's what I would ask you. If the payroll is what it was, and you could go no higher, which starter would you give back to open up more money for an outfielder? And which outfielder in free agency did you want?
Well, I mean,
because there are only 3 outfielders that signed for more money than Hunter Renfroe.
Right. Well, that's the problem. And you and I talked about this at the time, and I think we were pretty much on the same page there, is that signing was DOA because for the money they gave him, they could have signed, not forget more money. They could have spent less money. Like Randall Grichuk was the guy I remember when he signed with the Diamondbacks for like 1 year and $2 million guaranteed. And he's basically the same player as Hunter Renfroe, the same age, 32-year-old right fielder with, a solid history of success. And the Diamondbacks signed him. He's playing part-time. I'm not sure if he's been hurt a little bit, but he has a 112 OPS plus for the Diamondbacks this season. And he's making, $1.5 million this year and a $500,000 mutual buyout. So he's guaranteed $2 million for 1 year. The Royals gave Hunter Renfroe $13 million for 2 years, and he's maybe the worst.
You know what I'm going to say?
Huh?
Would he have signed with a 56-win team? Like, it's revisionist history now. They're like, look, you're playing for a contender. Listen, I'm all for it. The 100. We both. You're right. Neither one of us like the Renfroe.
It's always hypothetical. I don't know. And look, the Royals as a whole, like even with Renfroe getting way too much money and Garrett Hampson probably not moving the needle, Adam Frazier not moving the needle, the Royals still had a really good offseason in terms of free agency, because Seth Lugo might go down as one of the best free agent signings the Royals have ever had. He's certainly one of the best free agent signings of this winter class when you consider, like, the best free agent signings are almost always the superstars, right? So it's like, Shohei Ohtani's been worth every penny and then some, right? But like, whenever you get out of the superstar class, the risk of downside always exceeds the risk of the hope of upside. Like the odds that you're going to end up with a guy who's underpaid is so much less than overpaid. Seth Lugo right now looks vastly underpaid. Like there are a bunch of teams out there kicking themselves that they didn't offer more money for Seth Lugo. So all the credit to the Royals front office in a whole. It's just Hunter Renfroe specifically wasn't the player they thought that they were signing. And now they have to scramble and solve things. And they have time to do that. They can do that. The question is, do they do that internally or externally? And I think what we've seen from this week is that, to me, the lack of a move is a sign that they just don't trust their internal options, specifically Drew Waters. They just don't feel like, and honestly, if Drew Waters hadn't played in the major leagues and was just like a prospect or a 4A player, I'd be like, I'd trust their assessment that, look, they know that they're a player, they just don't think he can play. My concern is he has played in the major leagues. He has almost a season's worth of playing time over the last 2 years, and he was fine. Like, he wasn't great. I wouldn't even say he was good. He was average, borderline average, maybe slightly below. But right now, slightly below average would be a huge improvement for the Royals. And that's the thing that I don't understand. Is that, like, given what you're seeing from Melendez, Velasquez, and especially Renfroe, Drew Waters doesn't have to be anything more than he already was to be a huge improvement. So I'm a little bit, I'm surprised and a little frustrated with that lack of a move. That would be, that's my single criticism of the team right now.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, but I do know that not everybody's willing to sign in Kansas City. I just want to underscore that point.
Sure.
Also, underscore Casey Flatlander, hit the like button. Don't cost nothing, but it does us a world of good. So go ahead and hit that wherever you're consuming us. LinkedIn, most people are on YouTube, but Twitter, Facebook, Twitch. Go ahead and hit the like button, subscribe. It does a world of good for us. And, of course, our great sponsor, Gann Asphalt and Concrete. I'm with you, but I don't want to one off season to get it all done. Didn't we all say if they could just get part of the shopping list that he headed out on, we'd be satisfied? I'm satisfied. I mean,
13 games over 500. I'm more than satisfied.
to me, the question is, do you just not sign Hunter Renfroe? I almost said Hunter Dozier. Hunter Renfroe, and just keep the money in your pocket to have as part of something to pay someone at the deadline.
Don't sign anyone named Hunter. I think that's the rule here. That's what we've learned. I mean, frankly, when they signed him, yes, I would have told you, like, if that's what you're going to get for the $13 million, Hunter Renfroe, save the money. I did not feel like he was going to be better than replacement value. Was he better than Edward Olivares, who they ended up trading, to open up the roster? I don't think he was. And Olivares, he's not hitting the crap out of the ball for the Pirates or anything, but he's hitting 237, 295, 423. His OPS plus is 106. He's basically been slightly above average at the plate. We know he can't field, but I mean, he could DH in Kansas City. Like, it's not like the Royals have a great DH. That's the thing. It's like the Royals need a bat without regard to position. They could take anybody who can hit, put him at DH, and then either you bench Velasquez or you move Velasquez to a corner outfield and bench one of the other guys. So that's the thing. To me, Renfroe was the mistake. It was a mistake from the beginning. He hasn't given us any reason to think otherwise. But what's done is done. They made one mistake, but they also counteracted it with some really smart free agent signings. Waka, I think, will end up being worth the money. Certainly has not been, wasted money. And look, they are in a playoff race, which I think even the Royals, in their deepest of hearts, did not expect. They hoped for it. They went into this offseason with the hope that if everything went right, they could contend. And to their credit, they spent money like that. A lot of teams in the offseason where a lot of teams were not willing to spend money. This is the thing we praised them for on the offseason, is that they at least are trying. And this was the best case scenario. What we are seeing right now is essentially the best case scenario. But now that you're in it, you can't sit around waiting for these guys to come around. You've got to actually improve somewhere in your lineup. Because I think with 5 guys in your lineup, that 1 through 5 is really good. With Garcia and Witt and Pasquantino and Salvy and Massey, if you can extend that lineup by 1 or 2 more batters, it's going to make a huge difference.
Agreed. Listen, we're proudly brought to you by GAN Asphalt and Concrete. Whether it's seal coating, striping your lot, maybe it's concrete bumper, signage, maybe it's building that lot from new. With free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty. GAN Asphalt keeps your parking lot safer and helps you and your business avoid unnecessary delays and costly expenses. Find them online at ganasphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. GAN Asphalt and Concrete, one contractor, all things parking lot. We touched on Bubic. When do you think he'll actually be in a Royals uniform?
It really depends on if they intend to use him in the rotation. And I think right now that's still the default option. I'm assuming that they are expecting either a spot that they will need or that they'll create because they want to give some guys a rest. Probably for 3 to 4 weeks, I would say. By June 15th, by Flag Day, I think he'll be ready. Whether or not they'll activate him right away. Now, again, if he struggles between now and then they'll keep him. They'll extend his rehab assignment. But I actually think he'll be ready by mid-June, which is pretty impressive. That's 14 months after his injury, maybe 13 and a half months after his surgery. But it is going to be interesting if he goes out and pitches lights out for the next in his next 2 starts. And the Royals don't feel like they need him in the rotation. Do they promote him June 1st, 2 weeks from now, as a relief guy? So I think one way or the other, he's going to be in Kansas City by the middle of June.
Yeah, and if no rotation spot opens up, we've talked about how they might use him. Are you a believer that that little glimpse we saw last year, that's now the real Kris Bubic?
I mean, I'm not a soothsayer. And that is the question. I don't think the Royals know. Like, nobody knows. But I will say, with pitchers, when you see velocity, like, we have the metrics now and we have the measurement devices now. We didn't have 15 years ago. Before, the only way we could tell is the guy's lights out is, how many guys did he strike out? What was his pitching line? And that sometimes the guy just has a great day, and sometimes someone gets lucky. But now we could say very quickly a guy's velocity is up, the movement on his pitches is different than it was before. We can tell in the span of a couple of innings if a pitcher is a different guy than he used to be. So even though Kris Bubic did what he did last year for basically 2 starts, that was enough of a data point to say he is a different, better pitcher now than he was before. The Royals, and that I'm sure is what the Royals are looking at as much, if not more, than his performance in the minor leagues, because they have that data in the minor leagues, and we don't necessarily. So that's the thing, is that there is a knowledge gap here. If the Royals are seeing the same stuff that we saw, against, was it the Giants last year when he pitched? If they're seeing that in the numbers in terms of the velocity, in terms of the movement, then yes, I think he is the same guy. I think he would be, right? I would trust that data if that's the case. We may not know, you and I, until we actually see him on a major league mound,
Could we actually see Brady Singer, Kris Bubic, and Daniel Lynch
though.
all pitching well for this team this year?
In a team fighting for a playoff spot, Soren. The dream is still alive. I know.
Would you have to come out and say Dayton Moore shouldn't have been fired?
No, but I'm thinking I might have to say that we should just put JJ Piccolo in the Royals Hall of Fame now while he's still active. Maybe that's what I'll do.
Yeah.
That'll be the compromise.
On the rotation, I mean, we touched on this a little bit. You said it's the best ERA since 1972.
It's
Are you
even
ready
better
to
than
see
that? That was the best. Currently, it's the best of all time.
best of all time?
Yeah.
And so, are you ready to say that this will be the best rotation, better than Jackson, the 85?
Well, as I say, 85 is the standard. And again, ERA, I don't have an ERA relative to the league ERA. 2024 is a low offense, year right now. And offense is down even from last year. I think teams are averaging like 4.2 runs per game. But, like I said, 1972 was even lower than that because it was right before they instituted the DH. I'm looking up the 85 season now. I can give you an idea of how many runs per game. 4.56. So the offense in baseball, there was probably about 5% more runs, and that makes up the difference. So the 85, to me, the 85 team is still the gold standard rotation in Royals history. But this, at the moment, again, 5 starters have made all but 2 starts this year. If that continues, though, this has a very strong case as the best 1 through 5 rotation since 1985.
Yeah. Would you trade one of them? And if so, who?
Yeah, I probably, in the middle of the season, like you're saying, for like a big bat, is that kind of the idea? Because you have Kris Bubic, it would be a ballsy as hell trade to make, right? Depends on what you get, obviously. But if you feel like Bubic is ready, it's something you could justify because you don't need 5 for one thing, you don't need 5 in the playoffs, right? So it's like, what's the value of having that 5th guy? The question is, who do you trade? If the Royals think Cole Reagans is going to blow out his arm, then, he's the guy you could get an absolute boatload for. But he's also the one guy that you really feel confidence in going into a playoff series as your number 1 starter. And if you put Marsh out there, nobody's gonna have enough faith in Marsh that they're gonna trade for him if you put him out on the market based on 6 good weeks. So I think the obvious guy to trade is Brady Singer. I mean, we've been talking about trading Brady Singer on this program for a long time now. So if you were to trade one guy, the guy who I think has the best combination of value on the trade market, because you can, I think, very easily chalk up last year to just he didn't get a spring training. He was with the World Baseball Classic. It messed him up. He was terrible for the first 6 weeks, and then he was actually okay the rest of the season. In which case, the other, this year and 2022, he was excellent. But at the same time, the guy that you're not relying on to be, the number 1 or even number 2 guy in a playoff series, you could slot Kris Bubic into his spot and probably not lose much, and grab a big bat. I do think that trying to trade a key member of your team in the middle of a playoff race, that's a big gamble. And JJ Piccolo has shown a willingness to make, ballsy moves, but that would be extremely ballsy to do that midseason, especially on a team that is really has relied on its rotation to be one of the biggest surprises, if not the biggest surprise of 2024.
Otherwise, what are you going to deal?
Well, it depends on what you're trading for. And I've looked at, if we're talking about getting an outfielder, look, again, you don't need a big bat. You need a bat. You just need somebody who's average. The problem is, there's not a ton of options out there right now. I can count. I would say 5 teams that you can comfortably say are out of it for 2024 that are sellers, right? And there's value in trading with those sellers now, as the Padres showed with their Luis Arias trade. And I think it's really interesting and instructive that the Royals were apparently in on the Luis Arias, bidding, in part because I think, like, Arias can play second base, and so you think, oh well, they're going to put him at second base. I actually don't think they would have played him at second base because he's not a good defensive second baseman. In fact, he's played a lot of first base. I do wonder if the Royals were hoping to trade for him and putting him in left field. And you know that the bat will play anywhere. I mean, he's more value at second base, but if he's a decent defensive left fielder, he would have been a huge upgrade. And one of the reasons why I like the fact that they're thinking that way is, again, there's only about 5 teams, the Marlins one of them, that are truly out of it. There aren't a ton of outfielders that you really want to go after on those teams. We can go through them really quickly. The White Sox are obviously on that list. And I mean, they have one outfielder who's raking, and that's Tommy Pham. But Tommy Pham, in addition to being 36 years old, having been signed as a non-roster invitee, has a we'll say controversial clubhouse reputation. Some people think he's great and he's
They're not going for him.
Huh?
I don't think they're going for him.
Yeah, exactly. I just think anybody who slaps another guy in public over a fantasy football beef just seems to me like a guy a little too mercurial maybe for the Royals, because I do.
I mean, we can all understand it. We've all wanted to be there.
Yeah, exactly. We're all jealous that he got the opportunity, but I just don't know. I mean, the clubhouse, and that's another thing we haven't talked about. The vibes, as Bobby Wood Jr. is, but the vibes are great. Like, it just seems like this team in the clubhouse, and how much of it is winning begets good chemistry versus chemistry begets winning. But I think the Royals are conscious of the fact that these guys are really getting along. You probably don't want to bring in somebody that you're not sure will mesh with that. I get that. And Tommy Pham is one of those guys where it's like, plus, look, he's been hitting great, but it's like 83 plate appearances. He is 36 years old. Like, you're not certain you're going to get a difference maker at the plate. But the only other guy in Chicago, the other guy you could consider, because it's his last year before free agency, is Eloy Jimenez. And he would be a name if you think he can hit. Coming into today, he was hitting 218, 274, 371. If he were hitting, he'd be the obvious choice. He's not hitting. And maybe it's just because the vibes in Chicago are the exact opposite of great. Maybe you rescue him, he'll be fine. But that's a risk, because he's been one of their best players for several years, and they're probably not going to give him up for nothing. So you kind of strike them off the list. So then we moved to Oakland. We just played them, and of course, I hate to say this, and look, the Royals have made a lot of good moves, but one of the moves they made in the last year that wasn't so good was, after acquiring Brent Rooker. Actually, it was more like a year and a half ago. They let Brent Rooker go, and for the second year in a row, he's having a great season. He, on this team as either a DH or right fielder, would have just absolutely completed the team. But Brent Rooker also has like 4 years of club control left. He's not going to be cheap. I don't think the Royals have the farm system or the inclination to give up a ton. They're looking for a short-term rental, or they should be, that they can give up, maybe one of their 10 best prospects, but not one of their 5 best prospects. And Brent Rooker is really the only guy in Oakland that you would look at. The Angels have the big whale, Joe Adell, but I just think Joe Adell's finally, he's been a top prospect for years and finally starting to hit. But he's only 25. He's under club control for a long time. Like, that's the trade. You'd have to trade up a huge chunk of your farm system to get him. And maybe you do that, but it's a huge one.
The guy the Angels would be offering you would be Taylor Ward.
And Taylor Ward actually is, to get them, he's probably, of all the players I looked at on all 5 non-contenders, Taylor Ward might be the best fit in terms of value. He can hit. He's got a OPS plus above 104 years in a row. And he's, under club control for 2 more years after this, but he's 30 years old. Like, the price will be okay. It will be manageable. He can hit. He's played right field in the past. He's a left fielder now. And he's like good enough to make a difference, but not so good that you have to pay an arm and a leg for him. So Taylor Ward might be the guy, because, the Marlins don't really have anybody. I mean, Jazz Chisholm in center field has been, but like Jazz Chisholm was like on the cover of MLB The Show. Like you're going to have to pay a lot for him, and he's not actually that good. He's
Which is he has Royal written
yeah,
all over him.
he does, but like if you
All the
draft
tools, none of the on base.
exactly.
Trust me, I've had him on my fantasy team for 4 years. I know everything about Jazz.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the on base is getting better.
Actually, 6 years because I had him in the minors.
I mean, look, if you play in a league that counts stolen bases, he's got some value, but like he's okay. But like I just think that the Marlins look at him as the face of the franchise. You don't want to pay face of the franchise pricing for Jazz Chisholm. If you could get him for a decent price, I'd consider it. But I just feel like what he's going to cost is too much. And then the final team of the Rockies, and it's hard to trust anybody on the Rockies because you have no idea how much of their performance is that ballpark versus who they are. But also, like, none of their outfielders are any good. I mean, Brenton Doyle is their best, and he's just not that good. I would stay away. Colorado to me is a stay away. So it's really like either you go big with Joe Adell or Jazz Chisholm, or you pay a moderate price for Taylor Ward. That's really what you're looking at right now. If the Royals want to go that route, I would suggest doing it sooner rather than later because you're. It's not like you have one position where you're waiting for maybe you think MJ Melendez will come around. You have 3 holes. The odds that all 3 of these guys are going to solve things, and that you're not going to need another outfielder is extremely small. If you trade for one guy now, the 3 you still have, they can still fight over 2 spots in the lineup instead of 3, and you'll still have the opportunity to figure out which ones of them can turn it around. But you've got to solve at least one hole in your lineup. And if you can do it now and there's still 4 months left in the season, it's going to be more valuable than if you wait till the trading deadline.
What do you think? This team versus 2014? Yeah, 13 was what everybody wanted it to be. They just wanted to see signs that would come next year.
We're jumping way past that.
We already had some people pointing out the record is the same this year. I think it was Cam who pointed it out. Record's the same this year as it was in 15.
13, right. They're 10 games over 500, which is what they were at the end of the 2013 season, right? Which is,
no, but it's exactly where they were at this point in the 15 season.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, I mean, they're on pace. Like, I think, I'm not going to compare them to 2015 right now. That's a little much. But 2014, it's a 10-year reunion, obviously. I mean, first off, it's insane that we are doing this, right? Like that we have a reason to do it. All the credit to this team. This is the best case scenario that you and I have been, hoping one of these years the Royals would actually give us a best case instead of a worst case. To this point, that's what it is. And keep in mind, this team through 48 games now, they have a run differential now of plus 55. They had a run differential of plus 27 the whole of 2014. In a third of the season, they have twice the positive run differential they had 10 years ago. So at least on paper, this team is considerably better than the 2014 team. But the 2014 team had something, unique, which is to that point, a bullpen you could argue was the best 3-man bullpen in Major League history. Still, I believe the only bullpen in Major League history have 3 guys with an ERA under 1.5. Just phenomenal. And that's what this team doesn't have anything remotely close to that. But with MacArthur, Schreiber, and Serpa, there is at least the bones there of like 3 guys who have separated themselves from the rest. So, the weakness with Will Smith and Sauer and Chris Stratton, and Tyler Duffy, whoever's in that other spot, like that hurts the team. But like in tie games and 1-run games, they have at least 3 relievers right now that they have a reason to have confidence in. That's the kind of bullpen you want, where at least you have core guys that are significantly better than the rest. And in terms of the rotation, I mean, that team actually probably had a better rotation than the 2015 team because Jeremy Guthrie was still adequate in 2014. Right, and you had James Shields. They replaced Shields with Edinson Volquez the next year, but Shields was probably better. And then you had Vargas and Yordano Ventura, and then Danny Duffy. So rotation-wise, they're pretty comparable. This team has a chance to have a better offense. We forget. I mean, that team, the 2014 team, was dead last in the American League in home runs. They hit 95 home runs the whole season. This year's Royals, let me see, have are on pace for about 155 or so. So, I mean, there's a huge difference in terms of power. Now, that team was an elite contact team, probably better than this team was. But I think this team has more power. That's basically where the run differential comes into play. This team is like the 2014 team without the great bullpen, but with a lot more power up and down the lineup. And as much as you love the bullpen, and in the playoffs, the bullpen is the weapon you want. But for the regular season, at least, this team has more power. So I think, that team finished 89 and 73. I want to say the 2014 team. I don't think I would predict 89 right now, but I mean, that's only 6 more games above 500 than they are right now. So is it really that crazy to project them to 89? I think that we're in the ballpark.
I said all throughout 14, they were a team built for the playoffs. If they get there, the frequency of contact in their bullpen is going to make them tough, right? This team is built for the regular season.
At least right now.
Yes.
The one thing I'll say, though, is that stars win in the playoffs. Like, you do want star players in the playoffs. And so the fact that this roster is top heavy, the lineup especially, might suit them because, like, yeah, you might you're the bottom of the lineup are going to be a bunch of quick innings in the playoffs, but as long as you can bunch 5 good hitters together at the top of the lineup, we've obviously already seen Salvy in the postseason. His last postseason series, he was MVP. So, but you put Garcia and Witt and Pasquantino and Salvy and Massey in a row, even in a playoff series, you can't pitch around all of them. So if they can get one more bat to extend that lineup, the way they got Ben Zobrist to complete that 2015 lineup, this could be a team that matches up well in the postseason.
Well,
let's just get there. Like, the fact that we're talking, like, I feel like even just talking about it is just blowing my mind right now.
They were Zobrist away. They're more than Zobrist. I'm not saying that they can get to the playoffs with this lineup, right, if they stay healthy. But Zobrist did complete the lineup. Zobrist would not complete this lineup. It would improve it, but it would not complete it.
They needed probably another bat. And the other thing I'll say is the strength of this team being the rotation. That is not something that benefits you in the playoffs because, again, you're not going to need a 5th starter. So the fact that you have a really good 5th starter doesn't, and other teams don't. You need 4 at the most, and really 3 starters are going to make 85% of the starts in a postseason.
Real quick, let's finish with this. Got a takeaway from the 14 memory love fest? Anything from 14 that you want to finish with?
I mean, it's a reminder that Kansas City is a great baseball town, and when you just give them a reason, and we're starting to see it. I mean, we're seeing crowds of 25,000. The kids still aren't out of school yet. Like, I think it is always a lag time between a time that a team gets good and the fan base recognizes that they're good. But this town has always been, it's like a tightly coiled spring of enthusiasm that's just waiting to expand. You give them a reason to, and I think this could be a really loud summer at Kauffman Stadium. So there's that, and then to me, the real takeaway to me is just it's amazing. Every single player on that team is retired, is no longer playing baseball, except for Salvador Perez, who's not just playing, but like has a case to be made as the best catcher in baseball right now. It's just, this has been, an incredible year for the Royals, but it's really been a year to appreciate the marvel that is Salvador Perez, and his legacy has been in the last just 7 weeks, I think has been, burnished even more than it already was. I think if they are one postseason run with him away from him being clearly the second best player in Royals history.
Yeah.
Regardless of wins above replacement or not. Like, in terms of legacy, everything, George Brett will always remain alone, but Salvador Perez, we always quite argue who is the second best player in Royals history. Amos Otis, Kevin Napier, Saberhagen, Frank White. There's tons of candidates. If they make the playoffs and he's in batting cleanup on a playoff team in 2024, this honestly, it almost reminded me. It almost felt like Salvador Perez was there with it's like a movie where like all of his I don't know, his buddies from the war who died in the war, and they're like ghosts behind him talking. Like it almost felt like, Hosmer and all these guys are at the stadium, but they're not like there in corporeal form. Like he's the only guy still alive, right? In a baseball sense. And all of these ghosts are talking through him that we, the viewer, could watch in the movie. That's what it felt like. It's Salvador Perez alone and just the ghosts of baseball players past. He's not a ghost. He's still here. And I really think he's going to take his place as the most beloved player in Royals history aside from George Brett.
Well said, and a great way to end. That is Rany Jazayerli. We're proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete with free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews. Every project comes with a written warning. What are you waiting on? Don't let liability in your parking lot be a problem for you. One contractor, all things parking lot, Gann Asphalt and Concrete, online at gannasphalt.com. So for Dr. Rany Jazayerli, I'm Soren Petro saying thank you very much for joining us here